My parents leaned across the dinner table, looked my 16-year-old daughter in the eyes, and told her she was adopted. No warning. No preparation. Just cruelty disguised as truth. 9 hours later, they were locked out of my life for good. If you've ever had someone betray your trust in the deepest way possible, you know how much it burns. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this is the story of how my parents destroyed my daughter's world, and how I made sure they'd never get the chance to hurt her again. I never imagined that my own parents would become the villains in my daughter's story. To understand why what they did was so cruel, you need to know a little about us first. My name is Emily, and for the past 16 years, my world has revolved around my daughter, Lily. She's not just my child, she's the reason I get up every morning, the reason I kept going on days when life felt impossible. But Lily's story didn't begin with me giving birth in a hospital. It began in a quiet adoption agency office when I was 27, sitting across from a social worker who told me, "This baby needs someone who won't give up on her." I signed those papers with tears in my eyes and a promise in my heart. I would always protect her. I would always make her feel chosen, wanted, and loved. Now, adoption isn't a dirty secret in our home. It's something I planned to share with Lily when she was strong enough to handle it, when her sense of self was more secure. But here's the thing. Lily has always been a fragile soul. She's smart, kind, endlessly creative, but she battles anxiety and depression like a storm that never fully clears. We've spent years in therapy, building her self-confidence brick by brick. Her psychologist made it clear, don't rush this conversation. If she finds out before she's ready, it could shatter her. And I listened. I respected that. I wanted to give my daughter the chance to grow into herself before adding another layer of complexity to her identity. But my parents, they never saw Lily the way I did. To them, she was a symbol of my failure to have children the natural way. My mother, sharp-tongued and unyielding, always hinted that adoption was a second-choice option, as if my daughter was some consolation prize. My father, quieter but no less judgmental, would purse his lips whenever Lily called him grandpa, like the word didn't quite belong on his tongue. I tried to keep the peace. I wanted Lily to have grandparents, even if they were flawed. I told myself they'd soften over time, that love would outweigh prejudice. But deep down, I always felt the tension brewing. For Lily, though, my parents were still just family. She loved visiting them, baking cookies with my mom, listening to my dad's old stories. She saw them as part of her circle of safety. And that's exactly what makes what they did so unforgivable. Because when you're 16, already fighting to believe you're enough, the last thing you need is someone tearing down the walls of security you've built. And yet, that's what my parents did. They ripped the truth out of my hands, ignored the advice of professionals, and dropped it like a bomb, at a dinner table, in front of everyone, as if it were nothing more than correcting a slip of grammar. And in that moment, they didn't just betray me. They betrayed her. It was supposed to be just another family dinner. Lily had been looking forward to it all week. She's always been the kind of kid who treasures simple traditions, setting the table, lighting the candles, laughing at stories she's heard a dozen times. That night, she even braided her hair and picked out her favorite sweater, the one with tiny embroidered daisies. She wanted to look nice for her grandparents. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic bread filled the kitchen, and for a moment, I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this dinner would be normal. No passive-aggressive comments. No judgmental looks. Just family. The first half hour went smoothly. Lily chatted about school, about how her art teacher wanted to put one of her sketches in the hallway showcase. Her eyes sparkled when she said, "Our family is going to come see it, right?" She looked from me to my parents, proud and expectant. And that's when it happened. My mother's fork paused mid-A. She gave my father a glance, one of those silent exchanges they'd perfected over decades. Then she set the fork down, folded her hands neatly, and leaned across the table toward my daughter. "Sweetheart," she said in that syrupy voice that always meant danger, "you do know you're adopted, don't you?" The room went still. I swear I could hear the tick of the kitchen clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, even the sharp clatter of Lily's fork slipping from her hand and hitting the plate. Her face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. 16 years of carefully chosen words, of building trust brick by fragile brick, shattered in a heartbeat. I opened my mouth, ready to stop it, to undo it, but my mother wasn't finished. She gestured almost casually, as if she were correcting a mistake in grammar. You kept saying our family like you were born into it, but we just thought, well, it's important to be accurate.
Accurate.
My daughter's eyes darted to me, wide and wet.
Mom, she whispered. One word. One plea. And I felt my stomach twist into knots.
My father chimed in then, with that smug calmness that made my blood boil. Better she hears it now than later. Secrets hurt worse when they come out late.
Secrets?
This wasn't a dirty little secret I was hoarding. This was my child's identity, a conversation meant to be handled with care, guided by professionals, given to her when her heart was steady enough to hold it. But to my parents, it was just dinner conversation. I swallowed down the rage clawing up my throat, forcing my hands to stay steady, my voice to stay calm.
Not for them. For her.
Lily was trembling, her breathing shallow, her fork abandoned. She looked like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't ignorance. This wasn't a slip. This was betrayal. The car ride home was silent, but not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that weighs on your chest, the kind where every breath feels too loud. Lily sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if she was holding her whole body together by sheer force of will. I wanted to say something, anything, to soothe her. But what words could possibly fix what had just been torn open? Every sentence I rehearsed in my mind felt like it would either be too much or not enough. So I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white and drove us home through the suffocating quiet.
The second we walked through the door, Lily bolted upstairs.
I heard her bedroom door slam, followed by the muffled sobs of a girl whose world had just collapsed. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at the closed door, my hands trembling. My parents' voices still echoed in my head, so casual, so matter-of-fact, like they hadn't just detonated a bomb in my daughter's life. I finally pushed myself to move, to climb the stairs, and knock softly on her door.
Lily?
Honey, can I come in? For a long moment, silence. Then a shaky whisper, I don't know who I am anymore.
Those words sliced through me sharper than any knife could.
I opened the door to find her curled up on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, her cheeks streaked with tears. I sat beside her slowly, careful not to push too hard. She didn't flinch away, but she didn't reach for me either.
That hurt most of all.
Sweetheart, I began, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. You are mine.
You've always been mine. Adoption doesn't change that. You are my daughter.
Every part of you is loved. But she shook her head violently, fresh tears spilling.
They said I don't belong.
They made it sound like I was a mistake you covered up. God, I wanted to scream. To call my parents that very second and unleash every ounce of fury inside me. But looking at Lily, fragile and breaking, I knew this wasn't about me.
This was about her. About picking up the pieces they had smashed. That night, she cried herself to sleep in my arms.
Long after her breathing evened out, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, fury simmering under my skin. Her psychologist had warned me, don't bring it up until she's ready. She needs stability first.
And I had listened. I had trusted. But my parents had taken that choice from me, and from her.
They'd decided their need for control was more important than her mental health, more important than my role as her mother. And as I lay there, holding my daughter like a shield, I knew one thing with absolute clarity.
My parents weren't just careless.
They were dangerous.
And I wasn't going to let them near her again. The morning after that dinner, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing.
Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts from my mother that ranged from condescending to self-righteous. You're overreacting. She had a right to know. We didn't say anything wrong. You're the one hiding things.
I stared at the screen in disbelief. Not a single word of concern for Lily.
Not one apology for blindsiding a 16-year-old girl who already struggled to believe she was enough. Just excuses, wrapped up in their usual arrogance. By the third voicemail, my father's voice replaced hers.
Calm. Patronizing.
The way he always sounded when he was trying to make me doubt myself. Emily, you've always been too sensitive.
We just told her the truth. You're making it bigger than it is.
You can't shield her forever. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I set it down and walked into the kitchen, where Lily sat hunched over a cup of untouched tea. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked up at me with a question that ripped me in two. Did you know they were going to tell me?
The betrayal in her voice broke me. I dropped to my knees beside her chair. No, Baby. I swear to you, that was never their right.
That conversation should have come from me, when you were ready. She nodded faintly, but I could see the doubt flicker in her eyes.
My parents hadn't just told her the truth.
They'd planted poison, seeds of mistrust between us.
And they weren't done.
That afternoon, I got a call from a friend in town. "Hey, is everything okay? I ran into your mom at the store, and she said Lily finally knows she's adopted. She made it sound like you've been keeping some huge secret from her." My chest tightened. My parents hadn't just betrayed Lily in private. They were broadcasting it, painting me as the villain in my own daughter's life. When I confronted them over the phone, my mother's tone was smug.
Well, people were bound to find out eventually.
Better they hear it from us than through gossip.
Gossip.
I snapped, my voice shaking with fury.
You created the gossip. You humiliated her. You broke her trust.
Do you even care what this is doing to her mental health? There was a pause, then my father's dismissive sigh.
You always exaggerate.
She'll get over it.
Get over it. That was the moment something inside me hardened. They weren't sorry.
They weren't capable of being sorry. To them, Lily wasn't a person with feelings. She was a pawn in their power games, a symbol of everything they thought I'd done wrong. I hung up without another word, my hands trembling. For years, I'd bent, compromised, tried to make space for them in our lives.
But now, I saw them clearly.
And I knew what had to be done. After that phone call, something in me shifted. The grief was still there, sharp and heavy, but beneath it was a clarity I hadn't felt in years.
My parents weren't going to change. They weren't going to apologize.
And if I kept giving them space in our lives, they were going to keep hurting Lily.
So, I started planning.
The first step was practical.
I contacted my lawyer.
I updated every legal document I had, my will, emergency contacts, even the guardianship papers that listed who would care for Lily if something ever happened to me. My parents' names were erased from every line they'd once occupied. In their place, I wrote the names of people who actually loved my daughter, my closest friend, her godmother, and even her therapist, who agreed to be a legal advocate if needed. Next came the house. For years, my parents had a spare key for emergencies. That was a comfort once, back when I believed emergencies meant burst pipes or forgotten packages. But after what they'd done, the real emergency was them. I had every lock changed, every code updated. This house was now ours, and only ours. I didn't tell them any of this.
Not yet.
On the surface, I played along. I answered a few of their texts with short, neutral replies. I let them think they'd won, that I was sulking but would eventually cave. Because that's what I'd always done before, bend until I broke.
But not this time.
This time, I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd taken from us. I wanted them to walk into what they thought was just another dinner, only to discover the ground beneath their feet had shifted.
Meanwhile, Lily and I focused on healing.
Therapy sessions doubled. I spent evenings holding her hand while she cried, reminding her over and over. She wasn't a mistake, she wasn't unloved, she wasn't less than anyone else. Slowly, the cracks began to mend. And all the while, I was preparing for the confrontation that would end this cycle once and for all.
Because they thought they'd exposed a truth.
But the real truth was this: once you betray my daughter, you betray me.
And there's no coming back from that.
2 weeks later, I invited my parents over for dinner. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Not because I thought we could sweep what they'd done under the rug. I invited them because it was time for this story to end, and I wanted them to hear it from me, face to face. The night they arrived, the air felt heavy. My mother walked in first, her perfume sharp and suffocating, followed by my father with his usual quiet arrogance. They carried a store-bought cake like some peace offering, as if sugar could erase the damage they'd done. I set the table calmly, every movement deliberate. Lily wasn't there. I'd arranged for her to stay at a friend's house.
She didn't need to be part of this. This was mine to finish.
Dinner began with small talk, awkward and forced. My mother complained about the neighbors, my father about the weather.
They acted as though nothing had happened.
That alone made my blood boil, but I waited. I let them eat, sip their wine, get comfortable. Finally, I put my fork down and looked them both in the eye. This will be the last dinner we ever share. The words dropped like a stone in the middle of the table. My mother's smile froze, then twitched. "Oh, Emily, don't be dramatic."
But I didn't flinch.
You blindsided my daughter. You ignored medical advice, destroyed years of careful work, and left her questioning whether she even belongs in this family. And then, instead of apologizing, you spread it around town like gossip at a salon. My father leaned back, folding his arms.
We told her the truth.
That's not betrayal, that's honesty. I slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were copies of the legal documents, updated will, guardianship, everything.
No.
This is honesty. You're cut out of every plan, every contingency, every part of our lives. Effective immediately. My mother's face drained of color. She flipped through the pages, her hand trembling. You can't just erase us. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. Watch me. My father's calm cracked then, his voice rising. We're her grandparents. We have rights.
No, I said, my voice cold. You had privileges.
And you destroyed them the second you chose control over compassion. For the first time, they were silent. The weight of my words hung in the air. I stood, pushing my chair back. The locks are changed. You no longer have a key. If you show up uninvited, the police will be called. This is your goodbye. They sputtered, tried to argue, but I was already moving to the door, already opening it wide. My mother's face twisted with fury, my father's with disbelief.
But neither of them stepped back in.
And with a calmness I hadn't felt in years, I closed the door on them, for good. The door clicked shut, and with it, years of control, manipulation, and guilt finally ended. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the little girl desperate for her parents' approval. I felt like the mother I'd promised my daughter I would be, the one who would protect her, no matter the cost. I leaned against the door for a moment, listening to the muffled sound of my parents' voices outside. My mother's angry hiss, my father's stunned silence. Then, footsteps fading into the night. I didn't chase after them.
I didn't explain further.
I let them leave with nothing but the consequences of their own actions. When I picked Lily up later that evening, she looked at me nervously, as if bracing for more fallout.
I smiled and wrapped my arms around her.
It's done, I whispered into her hair. They won't hurt you again.
For the first time in weeks, I saw her shoulders relax.
She hugged me back tightly, whispering, "Thank you for choosing me." Those words hit harder than anything my parents had said. Because that's what this was really about, choosing her, every single day, over the people who thought biology mattered more than love. The next few days, my parents tried everything. Angry texts, voicemails dripping with guilt and threats. Even a letter left on my porch, demanding I reconsider. I blocked their numbers, shredded the letter, and carried on. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Sometimes revenge isn't about shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it's about closing them quietly and never opening them again. My parents thought they were teaching Lily the truth. But in the end, the real truth was this: family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, trust, and respect. And they lost their place in ours forever. Looking back, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud, dramatic, or explosive. Sometimes the most powerful form of justice is simply taking away access. My parents believed they had authority over my life, over my daughter's story, over truths that weren't theirs to tell. But by locking them out, legally, emotionally, and physically, I reminded them of a lesson they never wanted to learn. Control isn't love.
Do I wish things had been different? Of course.
A part of me still aches when I think about the grandparents Lily should have had, the ones who would have cheered for her at school plays, supported her art, and loved her without conditions.
But wishing doesn't make people change. Protecting my daughter does.
In the end, my parents lost the very thing they claimed they were fighting for, a place in her life.
And I gained something priceless.
My daughter knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that when push comes to shove, I will always choose her.
And honestly,
that's the kind of revenge that heals, not just hurts. Outro call to action, tilde 170 words. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Because nothing feels better than seeing justice finally served. And I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Would you have cut them out completely, or tried to forgive? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you love stories where betrayal meets justice, where people finally take back their power, then make sure you subscribe. We've got so many more tales of revenge, resilience, and karma coming your way, and trust me, you don't want to miss them. Remember, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't screaming, it's silence. It's closing the door, changing the locks, and building a life where those who tried to hurt you no longer get a front row seat. Thanks for listening, and until next time, protect your peace, protect your family, and never let anyone rewrite your story but you.